The awkward duo, Ilya Dutch Lichtenstein and his wife Heather Morgan, aka Razzlekhan. Oh my God. Can we play a clip of Razzlekhan? So this couple, they were arrested and arraigned in Manhattan court yesterday on money laundering conspiracy and conspiracy to defraud the United States. Charges linked to
it wasn't just any money laundering, right? It was like probably one of the biggest hacks in the history of crypto outside of Mt. Gox.
And now they've seized, exactly 120,000 Bitcoin taken, now worth about $4.5 billion. Law enforcement were able to seize $3.6 billion from wallets linked to this crypto couple. We've got a clip of Razzlekhan though, because it's taken crypto Twitter by storm. Do we have this shot?
A real risk taker, pirate riding the flood, badass money maker, grandmother crocodile, weirder than an X-file, brief fire, silver, so sexy when I
bought her entire catalog on iTunes.
I bought it. Yeah, I bought the entire catalog last night. And I was playing it all morning. My wife and I actually stayed up till about midnight, 12:30, just watching her videos on TikTok. It was it's actually high art. I think this is one of. I'm upset that I hadn't heard of her before. I liken her to Kitty, who's a rapper who came out about 10 years ago with the same kind of. Kitty, real. Genius there with her music and the quality, but this was kind of a good runner-up. I wish I could have seen Razzlekhan in concert. Hopefully if they let her out, you should wear the ankle bracelet, do a few shows. I'll pay for it.
But folks are seriously wondering, how did these folks attach themselves to this? Were they intelligent enough? Because it seemed like there was a lot of slip-ups, a lot of sloppiness in their execution of these alleged money laundering charges.
Yeah, if you read the complaint, you see a lot of these, things where they're keeping it in a spreadsheet. It seems like it's on a Google Doc, on a cloud file. It's like, what? These are people who wrote. Ilya Lichtenstein has posted on Twitter many times complaining about people doing things that get themselves hacked. He thinks, he said he was upset with publications, including CoinDesk. It's like, hey, why aren't you covering, let's say, bugs in Polygon? And the same thing with her. She wrote articles in Forbes about how to prevent being hacked, and yet her stuff was on the cloud.
Right. She also wrote about how to become a success, which includes, being your authentic self, but it also excluded, potentially money laundering from a crypto exchange, but allegedly. And I'll just mention on January 31st, law enforcement also accessed the wallet, and according to this complaint, containing over 2,000 BTC wallet addresses and their private keys on Ilya's cloud storage, which they accessed with a warrant. It's confusing to me because apparently defense attorneys said that the defendants have been aware of the investigation since at least the past November, after one of their service providers received a subpoena. Yet they were here. They didn't leave New York City, a tough jurisdiction. So, I thought Wonderland DAO last week was shocking, but crypto doesn't disappoint.
No.
Let's dive further on this with Nick Day, who's also been following this. We've got CoinDesk Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor Nick Day with us. Hello there, Nick. So CoinDesk has been following this. One of our reporters was in court the other day as the couple was being arraigned. What's the latest?
Good morning. Yeah, so we were in court yesterday. Some of our reporters were live at the scene. At the time, a judge did order that the two could be released on bond, but this was actually stayed by another judge in D.C. last night around 10 p.m. So as of this morning, both defendants should still be in lockup, and they will remain there until the D.C. court has a chance to review the overall case and specifically the bail order. But there were a lot of interesting details that came out during the hearing yesterday, including, but not limited to, apparently the couple allegedly had a bag full labeled burner phones under their bed. Yeah, they had the aforementioned wallet addresses. They had a folder on their computer titled "Passport Ideas" on how to create or acquire illicit passports on the dark net. Allegedly, a lot of interesting details.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you would think this is the Keystone Cops of hackers, but at the same time, this was one of the biggest mysteries in crypto for many years. Second or third to who was Satoshi Nakamoto. I mean, this was a major event in a lot of ways in the history of Bitfinex and ultimately the history of, for instance, Tether. But the interesting thing is that in the complaint, it didn't specifically say they were the hackers. It said a hacker broke into Bitfinex, but it didn't say they were. And so that leaves open the possibility that others could be indicted, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So the complaint statement of facts implied, I think, kind of heavily that those two are the hackers, but you're right. They did not explicitly say at any point that the two defendants were the hackers. The charges have nothing to do with the actual hack itself, just with, having the funds and conspiring to launder them. So it's very possible that there are still individuals out there who were responsible for the hack itself. And, even remembering that 3 years ago, I think Israeli authorities arrested two individuals on suspicion that they might have been the hackers. But again, we don't know for sure yet whether or not any of these four individuals arrested either 3 years ago or yesterday were behind the hack itself. Only that the couple arrested yesterday allegedly had access to, I think they said, the entire trove of nearly 120,000 Bitcoin that were stolen back in 2016. Although at this point, only 94,000 seem to have been recovered, with the remainder having been either laundered or frozen or sent through other wallets.
And it wasn't just Bitcoin, right? It was Monero.
As Lawrence kind of mentioned early on, it seems like there were a lot of, or as you were actually saying as well, there were a lot of kind of like careless errors here. But what was the role of blockchain data itself in terms of like tracking this? I mean, how much kind of like blockchain sleuthing was done in order to like get to these charges?
So this actually ties into something we ran last night around, I want to say somewhere between midnight and like 2 a.m. A little hazy on the specific time. A judge who ordered a warrant or signed a warrant actually wrote about this and really praised the role blockchain analytics had. So according to the complaint itself that was published yesterday, there was a pretty sophisticated set of transactions that were designed to try and obfuscate the source of the funds that the defendants allegedly utilized. So according to the complaint, they allegedly laundered funds through darknet markets like Alphabet. They deposited funds somewhere and then tried to withdraw them, hoping that they were commingling, and therefore you can kind of obfuscate where exactly those funds came from. There were statements that privacy coins like Monero were used to try and kind of hide the source of the funds. So there was a pretty sophisticated set of techniques used to try and hide where exactly these funds came from, namely Bitfinex. But analytics were apparently a key player in tracking these funds from the original Bitfinex wallet to the first holding wallet, let's say, first recipient wallet after the hack, to the 2,000 other wallets that ultimately were seized. So Judge, went on praising blockchain analytics. There were, you saw blog posts from a lot of the major blockchain analytics firms yesterday detailing how these funds were moved. So, the key things here does seem to be that the transparency of the Bitcoin ledger was a critical part of being able to track these funds and ultimately identify how, where they are and how to seize them.
I mean, the law enforcement must love the Bitcoin blockchain for tracking these transactions. I also wonder what do we know about because 3.6 billion was seized worth of Bitcoin. There was about 4.5 billion though altogether. So where's that other billion? And we also reported at CoinDesk in June of 2019 that the Gigi brothers from Israel were also connected potentially with the Bitfinex hack. So I wonder, I mean, this story seems to have more to it than meets the eye, that we just don't know. Is that your sense as well?
Yeah, so taking the second one first, I tried looking up what happened today, GG Brothers, and doesn't seem to be any kind of real update from the Israeli court system in the last couple of years. So it's unclear to me whether or not they were convicted or if they are indeed connected to the hack specifically. It's very possible that they might have just claimed responsibility for something they didn't do, because some of the details that they described when they were arrested don't quite seem to match up with what we do know about the hack itself. And as far as the remaining, it's about 26 billion, I think, or 25,000 Bitcoin that were not seized. It does seem like some of these are frozen in crypto exchange wallets, frozen by law enforcement officials or by the exchange itself in connection to them being from the Bitfinex hack. Some of them seem to have been spent. Apparently, the couple allegedly bought a PlayStation and gift cards, and some of your more innocuous everyday things, just using the Bitcoin that was from this hack. Some of these funds seem to have been disappeared. Again, they tried to use a pretty sophisticated set of techniques to just obfuscate where these funds came from and then where they went, which I'm not going to say that you have to admire or respect this, but if you're trying to launder funds stolen from a crypto exchange, doing your best to obfuscate their source is probably the way to go, and probably something that they could have done a bit more effectively here.
So this raises a question: is ultimately how or what tipped off the feds to get a search warrant into Ilya Lichtenstein's cloud computing accounts that led them to this trove? Do we quite know yet what the tip-off was? Because again, Bitfinex was offering a hefty reward for it.
I don't think we know specifically what tipped off the federal agents investigating the case. We do know that a number of different departments were involved, including the IRS Criminal Investigation Service. So it's very possible that they were just plain tracking the Bitcoins, as they moved through the different wallets and as the different transactions were, conducted. But we haven't yet heard if there was, any kind of so-called smoking gun that set them off and said, "Oh, wow, this cloud wallet or this cloud spreadsheet definitely has like all the information we're looking for."
What was also interesting to note is that several times this couple tried to open up accounts on U.S.-based exchanges, and KYC AML restrictions basically raised some flags along the way. They were using, and they were also using email accounts in India. Correct? I mean, this is like there were certain things put in place already on the exchanges that may have tipped off the feds.
Very possible. And yeah, throwing this back to at the beginning, I mentioned that they had a folder of passport ideas, titled passport ideas, where they were trying to basically list down how they could acquire fake passports through the darknet. And it seems that they did try to set up a number of accounts at different crypto exchanges under not names not their own, presumably as a part of an effort to try and cash out the Bitcoin without putting their own names on it. And yeah, some of these accounts were frozen. And according to the feds, the alleged defendants actually kept track of which accounts were frozen. They had in their spreadsheet a list of the wallets that were still accessible or still active, and the ones that were frozen. So they were clearly keeping a very close eye on what they can or could not do.
In the meantime, CoinDesk reporting that the couple's cell phones and computers will be confiscated, and they will be given a flip phone and one internet-connected device, and monitored by pre-trial services so they can access their bank accounts and email their lawyers. But in case you want to check out their socials, you better do it now, or archive that TikTok, because the Instagram for Razzlekhan already private.